Hey everybody, Gary here with Guitar Tricks, and in this video we're going to go over how to change the strings on your guitar. We're using standard tuners, the kind that just have a hole straight through them, but the principles we go over are going to be true no matter what kind of tuners you have. We're going to change them on this old 1968 Yamaha SA30 guitar. The strings are very old, they won't stay in tune, they're kind of rusty, so let's get to it. Before we get started, please go ahead and click that subscribe button so that you get all the latest and greatest content from Guitar Tricks. And if you want to be notified of any new lesson, be sure to also tap the bell. Also, let us know, are there any tutorials, topics, whatever kind of videos that you'd like to see? Let us know in the comments. We're always looking there to see what to do next. All right, let's get into it. So I've got some strings. I've got wire clippers. I've got a tuner for the end. And I've got a string winder. So none of this is actually necessary. Well, the strings, obviously you need those, but the string winder just kind of saves some pain in the wrist when you're winding all those strings, makes the job much quicker. And you could roll up the strings if you had to in a pinch and not worry about cutting them, but I like to cut them at the end, right? So this is all I use. They make string winders that have a clipper, so you could, search around for a better string winder if you like. I just use two separate tools. All right, so I've got the old Yamaha here. Strings haven't been changed in a while. So first thing I'm going to do is loosen up the strings so that I could cut them without a sudden force on the guitar. I don't want to clip them while they're at full pressure, so I want to relieve the pressure and then clip them off. So here we go. E string already broke off. See, I can just go like that by hand. That's fine. I'll do these two by hand. So now they're real loose, so when I cut them, they're not going to snap. You want to make sure you're going in the right direction. Give those a few spins. I also have this towel, just so I don't damage my guitar, so put that on your surface, something nice and soft. All right, everything's nice and loose. So now right around the middle, I'm just going to snap these strings. Now I'm going to pull them off the tuning pegs. I'm gathering them up because I'm going to tie them into a nice little disposable tie. So once I get them all together, I usually just go like this. And then I put them all in there like that. And that just keeps them from being loose. And now on the bridge side, I'm just going to pull them out of the retainer. Just being careful not to damage the surface of the guitar with the string, so no need to rush. Now some guitars, you push through the back of the body, the string, but no matter what, the string is retained somewhere, right? Telltale sign, these were D'Addario strings with the multicolored ball ends. That's how they identify which string is which. Again, I'm going to make a little tie. All right, put that aside. Okay, so now the strings are off the guitar. All right, this is where the magic happens. Ooh, nice fresh set of strings. It's like opening up some candy. So now some strings are color coded. If you buy D'Addario, for instance, they'll tell you the color coding on the packaging, but Ernie Ball has them individually wrapped. And I usually like to go from the high E string to the low E string, and I don't tune anything to final pitch until the end. So I'm going to start with the high E string. Make sure you keep them in order. All right, so I'm taking out my high E string. I'm going to put it through the retainer on the bridge. Pull it all the way through. Make sure it goes all the way so that you don't start tuning and then realize it's not all the way. Certain guitars, it can get stuck before the final spot, like on a Strat. I've had it stuck on the end of the block on the bottom. So just make sure it's pulled all the way. So I'm aligning the tuner so that it's in a straight line with the string, the hole, so that the hole is right in line. So I'm going right through the hole. What I'm going to do, before I start turning it, I want to get at least an open hand's worth of slack from the neck to the string. That's how much slack I want. So like an open hand like that. That's a good amount of slack. because I want to get a few turns. If you don't have locking tuners, you want at least 2 turns, preferably 3, especially on the thinner strings. I can go for 4 or 5 on the thinner strings. So I've got a nice open hand, so I'm going to keep that amount of slack. Right now I'm just going to pinch where I was, right on the high E string, right on that tuner. So I pinched it, and now I know I've got that much slack right there. Okay, now the main thing right here is keeping the tension while you're turning. I have to keep the tension or else it won't lock in place. Let me show you what I mean. So I'll do the first one by hand because you might not have a string winder. Okay, so I start to turn it so that it turns towards the inside. So it's pushing the string towards the inside. I want all my strings to be on the inside of the tuners, not the outside. So currently I'm tuning the tuner counterclockwise. Okay, now as it starts to turn, right there, I'm going to use my hand to create a notch right there. See, so there's no slack. I'm pulling tight with my hand, and the string is just around my hand. I don't want to put any kinks in the string, so I have the string resting across 4 of my fingers like that. So I'm pulling tight now that it started to turn. Now I'm going to maintain that pressure as I turn the tuner. So now I'm turning the tuner and I'm maintaining that no slack pressure. So now as it turns, it can't get loose because I'm holding the pressure. I'm going to switch hands like this, okay? So I'm holding it tight and it's starting to tighten up. I've got 1, I've got close to 2 winds now. See, I'm holding it tight the whole time. All right, now another thing that's important is you want the string to go beneath this extra string that's hanging. You want, as you're winding it, you want this to stay above. So you want it to come along the bottom. Now I'm also pulling down a little bit because I want each next winding to go lower. So every time I get another wind, I want it to go below the previous wind. When I say below, closer to the headstock. So my slack is going downwards as opposed to upwards, right? My hand is like below the neck. Some people will recommend making a knot to keep the string from coming loose, but as long as you hold tight on the string so there's no slack while you wind it, it's not going to come loose. In over 20 years, I've never had a string come loose this way. Okay, now we're almost getting there. As we almost get there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it up, put it in the nut slot, and now I'm going to put my finger by the nut to hold it tight there as a retainer, and I'm going to pull up a little with these 2 fingers, again, to hold the slack. But now I've got a guide, so I'm holding the slack with these 2 fingers, but I'm holding it by the nut as well. So I'm feeding it under my finger through the nut until I get that final tightness. And that's the magic moment. Now, if we look at the bridge side, what ended up happening while I was doing that is it ended up in the B string. So, you know, I checked that. Now I put it in the right slot. And that's fine for now. It's enough to hold it tight. I'm not going to fine tune it until they're all on. So this is well below actual pitch. And that's fine for now. So now we'll do it with the next string. All right, that was my 10. Here's my 13 for the B string. Again, I feed it through the bridge. Make sure it's in the right hole. Pull it through. Now I'm going to line up my hole so that the hole is facing the nut. There we go. Put my string in. And my goal is to get at least 3 winds. On the low E string, maybe 2, maybe 3 here, 3 or 4 here, 4 or 5, 5 or 6, right? The narrower the string, the more winds you could get. I like a lot of winds because it's less likely that the string is going to get pulled out of the tuner or anything like that. With one whine, I'd feel a little insecure that it might come loose. So here we go. Now, how do I ensure I have enough whines? So like I said, I'm going to use my hand. Once I make sure I have it tight, I want to get at least on like the middle of the neck about an open hand's worth of space. Right, like that. Okay, I'm going to just hold that. Now what you can't see off camera, I'm just going to pinch it at the tuner so I know where my spot is. Okay, now I'm going to bring the guitar so you could see. So I pinched my spot right there. Okay, so now I'm just going to hold it right there. Now I'm going to start to turn the tuner. Again, I want to turn it, in this case, on this kind of guitar, counterclockwise so that the string is going inside the middle of the headstock. That's where it feeds. We don't want the strings outside. Okay, now that the hole has come kind of towards perpendicular to the neck, now I'm going to pull tight with my hand on the string to take away any slack and keep turning. Okay, so now I've got a kink. There's a kink in the string while I'm holding tight. I'm pulling down toward the headstock because I want each additional turn to go lower and lower towards the headstock. Each loop is going to go lower and lower. It's not going to come up. And this piece is going to stay above my loops. Okay, so now holding the slack over my hand. Remember, you don't want a kink, so I have it dispersed over 3 or 4 fingers. I'm going to start to turn. And I'm going to get my winder. As long as you hold that slack, you're going to get very neat, well-organized winds. The winds are going to stay very nice. Okay, it's starting to get tight already. So now this happens sometimes. If you tighten too much, you can't get it above that tuner. I can't pull it above. So I'm just going to hold the slack. I'm going to loosen it a little bit just so I can get it above this tuner. There we go. Now I'm going to feed it into that nut slot, like I said, but I'm going to hold the slack here with these fingers, but press this finger right at the nut slot. Get those last couple whines. And there we go. So you're going to repeat the same process for all the strings. Just remember, the wider the string, the less whines that you'll be able to fit on a tuner. So you have to take that into account when you measure your slack. And sometimes you might have to reverse course. You might start to whine and realize, I don't think I'm going to have enough slack, or I have too much and I'm going to have too many whines on that tuner. So it's a little bit of trial and error. Don't be afraid to dive into this process. It's something you're going to have to do over and over when your strings either start to sound dead, they don't have a clear sound, they don't sustain, or they get really dirty and gross. I change strings at least once a week, not on every guitar, but I have a lot of guitars. So invariably, one of them needs a string change almost every week. Remember to keep the string on the inside of the tuner so that it's on the headstock side, not on the side outside of your guitar. Keep that tension so there's no slack. Remember that each consecutive whine should go beneath the previous whine as it works its way toward the headstock, and you'll do just fine. All right. So now before I cut the strings, I'm going to tune it up, just make sure there's no problems before I cut anything. So just to get myself in the ballpark, I'm just going to use a tuner app, play the pitches. In the ballpark. So another thing, you want to stretch the strings. You know, you can just bend them. Once you get it kind of at pitch, you can give them a bend. You can go like this, just not hard, just kind of stretch it a little bit, pull it up. If you got a whammy bar, right? Because that's what makes that first day where they keep kind of going out of tune, is because they're stretching. So you kind of speed up that process. Don't pull hard, just a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to put on my fine tuner. Let's see what's going on. fresh strings. All right, so now I could cut them. And when I cut them, I like to leave like 1/2 inch. And the reason why is if I ever had to take the string off, let's say I want to replace a pickup and I didn't want to have to replace the strings, if I leave 1/2 inch, I can pull it through to the original kink with pliers. But if I cut it without any slack at all, I can't do that. Now, the only downside is that you might poke your finger on the edge, on the end of a string and cut yourself. That's happened to me before. So if you are paranoid about that, cut it nice and close to the tuner. But I like to just leave, you know, like 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch on each one. And like I said, there's a multi-tool that's both a winder and a clipper in one that you could get. But I just use these kind of wire cutters from Home Depot. And there we go, all done. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to learn more about all things guitar, head over to guitartricks.com. Happy playing, and I'll see you in the next lesson.